Well, thank you for inviting me. I also am a Methodist. I grew up in Kansas and moved here in '89 and met a kid from Shelton, which is down the road, and he was a Catholic with his first marriage, and I was raised Baptist. And so we talked to my minister and said, what's a good church that's kind of in between? And he gave me a list. And one of the first churches I won't use their name, but I visited in Kearney, they said, oh, you won't like it here, there's no one your age. So they did not necessarily roll out the welcome mat, and I came here and felt very welcome, and so we got married here in '93. Our kids grew up in pumpkin patch daycare, so we're pumpkin patch parents, baptized, etc. So this is our church, and this is my community now. So I say I'm from Kansas, but I'm really from Kearney, Nebraska. So I work for the Community Foundation. I've been here since 2001, so 23 years, going on 24. And the thing I love about it is, and Dan was one of my board chairs back in the day, we're in the for good forever business. So what that really means is that we're here to do good in our community, and we're here forever, because we also like to talk about endowments. So what is a community foundation? I thought, that's usually what I talk about, but I did want to just kind of lead with a few of those slides, because some of you may or may not understand what a community foundation is. So the first thing I like to do is define what community is, and people that are connected by geography and to each other, but you can also be a community and be connected other ways. And so our church is, in essence, a community, because we're connected with our faith, we're connected with the committees we're on, and our belief system. What's a foundation? Well, a foundation is a platform for growth. So you've got your Nebraska Foundation. We went with the Nebraska Community Foundation. We went with the Methodist Foundation. They're hosting us today. But we're a unique bird in that when you combine community and foundation, we're a platform for building your community. One thing I'll say is we're not afraid of faith. Some communities and their foundations don't necessarily get into the faith business, but we have several endowments for Methodist churches, which is kind of interesting. We have a couple ministries that come through the Community Foundation, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So we can also partner with you if you want to support, whether that's through your church or individually, something that's kind of a combination of your faith and your community. It's kind of weird having my back to the slides. We'll talk to trustees about getting longer talk square. Okay, I know a few people on that committee. Well, it's interesting because one of the things Randy talked about is he's part of this Giving USA. I had no idea who sat on that board or that committee that funnels all this information. But I also have a slide. It's interesting because my side's a tiny bit different, but the pieces of the pie are very similar, right? So where's the money given to charity? Where's that come from? And so this first slide is in 2009, $303 billion. And the reason I use this when I talk to folks in the community is they think when we write a grant, we just need to write a grant and it'll get done, right? If we need a new playground, let's just write a grant. And those corporations or foundations will fundle it. I know when in church business, you probably don't write a lot of grants to corporations or foundations. And so I think it's good to just realize that most of our support, in this slide, 75% comes from individuals. The next slide is a little more current. And so 10 years later, what he's saying with the Giving USA doing the research is it's now grown to $449 billion. But look, the piece of pie is not quite different, or very different. It's 69% comes from individuals. So I just think that's kind of important to talk about or understand as far as the background. So today I want to talk about what is generosity in church and community. And so I want to hopefully inspire you, whether you're a church leader, whether you're clergy, I guess that's a church leader, right? But a layperson, maybe you're a potential donor, but it sounds like we're all Methodist members and people of faith. So hopefully today we'll talk about how do you keep fanning the flame and be inspired to be a generous giver, whether it's in your church and or your community. And what's the importance of charity in Christian life? I am not a minister. I don't know my Bible like the rest of you, but I can pull out a couple verses I think support that. So first of all, I'm trying to understand my audience here, but I think, first of all, we're individuals, right? Some of us are clergy, some of us come from, maybe we're ready to plan our estate. So when I speak about this, maybe think about, as leaders in our churches, how can we go back with some of these concepts, okay? So the first is we need to, I want to make sure we're on the same thing, is we just want to thank you for giving. I don't think we do a good job telling people thank you. And it's come up a couple times. I wasn't going to do it, but I sat through the morning, because I'm always trying to learn. But I think we have to stop and write thank yous. That is such a gift. I don't know about you guys and gals, but when I say guys, so sorry. I'm from Southwest Kansas. I'll probably say y'all. Don't you just love it when you get a thank you note in the mail? It's such a rare gift anymore. We are starting to give kiddos that get scholarships a blank thank you note, because they may not have one at home. We give them the donor's address that gave them that scholarship, through their scholarship fund. And I'm not sure if they all follow through, but when they do that, donor is super pleased. And I just think we need to always remember that, whether someone brings us bread that's a neighbor, if somebody's volunteered to do something in the church, is to thank. So we just need to thank. And so I want to thank you guys for coming today. And I think gratitude is super important. It's just I love it, because it's kind of some themes that are kind of interwoven today. And I also just think we need to stop and acknowledge the giving that's already done. So somebody before us built this church. Somebody before us gave money to the missions or to the children's program. And so now it's our turn, okay? And guess what? The kiddos are watching us, that next generation, whether they're in our Sunday school classes, or they're just in our church, or maybe they're in our own family. The other thing we need to do is just celebrate. We get so serious as adults, we forget to celebrate. I mean, the kids have it right. They live in the present, they celebrate, and we just need to have fun. I think sometimes we were talking about how this is kind of a dry day. Hopefully you guys, this is terrible to talk after you've had a lunch, but just to have some energy around celebration and talk about the impact. And that has been the kind of a theme this morning too. People like stories. And so when you're in front of somebody, a lot of us, and I've been doing this since 2001, I hate to ask people for money, but I love to tell you stories. I love to tell you how your gift's gonna change my community, how your gift's gonna change your church. People remember those stories. So I don't have a lot of facts and figures, because I think that you'll forget that when you get in your car, but you're probably gonna remember a few stories I'll tell you today. And then the biblical encouragement, right, is well done, good and faithful servant, Matthew 25:21. It just kind of reaffirms that we're doing this out of faithfulness. I was talking to Bruce Lear, he's also my financial planner. I said, okay, how are you doing this? You're gonna do slides, getting ready for today. He was our speaker this morning. He said, I kind of didn't want to say yes, but I felt like God was saying, you need to do this. Where are those taps? Are you feeling a little tap or a tug to do more of this, as far as whether it's giving or encouraging others to give? What's your tap? I was raised Baptist, so it's Baptist guilt. What motivates you to give back to your church and your community? The next slide is the spiritual impact of continued generosity. I think one of the speakers, I know they talked about it today, is it was the lady from Union Bank. She talked about give while you're alive. Give while you're alive. Those thank you notes mean a lot to you. You can see the impact of your gift. There's just something about how it deepens your faith. You're thankful that God has blessed you with resources. It's part of your discipleship. We ebb and flow with our faith. Maybe something bad's happened and you're just like, okay, I just need to step away. And maybe you're also adversely, something really cool happened and you want to just embrace God and thank him. That we're always on that journey, all of us, even clergy. I'm sure you guys have days where it's a little tougher than other days, but I think if you're very intentional with your giving, and also it comes with that impact of your spirituality, I think it does deepen your faith. I know for me, it does make me pause and say, okay, God, thank you that I can make a living where I can give back and take care of my family. They're all grown now, but you're still taking care of your family. But I also have a little bit I can take care of my church and my community. And that's part of that God's provision, right? It's just it's a testament to God giving us greater blessings, and also sustains the church in their spiritual mission. Transformation through giving. So, some people might look at that picture and see a handout, but I always like to think of it as a hand up, right? So don't ever think that this picture I love because it's pennies and look what's grown out of pennies. It doesn't have to be a huge gift. It's just a gift. How can you give? How can you make a difference? And how can you change those lives? You know, one of the things we need to do better in the church is to have testimonials. So nothing about the preachers, but if they're always the ones talking, it feels like noise. But if somebody comes up that's either been impacted or they've made an impact, it feels creepy to us maybe to be braggadocious. It doesn't have to be braggadocious, we're just telling a story. Here's why I give to the mission trailer. I love the idea that food is not going to waste. You know, we just were talking about what do we do with all this food? They're gonna go to Crossroads and make sure it continues to feed people in our community, right? So remember those, tell those stories about how lives have changed and how it just always, I don't want to be a minister because it feels like you have a lot on your plate, and the last thing you would do is ask for money, right? To keep your salaries healthy and your lights on. But I think part of it that comes from all of us is we can preach, we can talk, we can share stories about how lives have changed. One of the stories I have is that I worked with this kid, and his brother died not too far from here. He had made some bad choices and drank and wrecked his car. And Keith Becker came to the foundation office and said, I need to make something better out of this. And so the Todd Becker Foundation grew up with that kid wanting to do something, that his brother's death was not just pure loss. And he now has a mission. He goes to schools, they talk about faith and better, making good choices. He felt like he could turn a tragedy into a faith piece and also change community. So one person can make a difference, okay? You can have that community impact. The next slide talks about times and talents. And I think people see me come in and they're like, oh, she's gonna ask me for money. That's not the part of my job I like. I like to connect to people. I feel like I'm a connector. So I like to learn about what you're passionate about. And I think that same thing goes with your church. What are you passionate about? Are you passionate about the youth ministry? Are you passionate about the college kids? What's touched you? What has helped you? One reason I think people are so good about giving back to their churches is they can see the difference it's made, or they feel it. So one of the mistakes I made with my mom is her church was super big in her life. It was a tiny church. I think they had 15 members that went all the time in Alden, Kansas, a little Baptist church. I'm in this business, and I did not have this story with her about, you can take that bushel of corn, and what a great example, right? Scoop out 5% for the little Alden Baptist church. Us kids are gonna be fine with that 95%. We don't even need the 95%, but you're inclined to give to the kids, okay? So she did not slow down or take the time. I think she would have, because she was very generous, but that check that went in that offering plate every week is gone. When she passed last September, it's gone. So we should have had that discussion. So even I goof with my own family. It's awkward, but I wish I would have. I feel bad. So what can I do with my 1/3 of the inheritance? You remember they were talking about that transfer of wealth. So when my mom passed away in September, 2/3 stayed in Kansas, 1/3 came to Nebraska with me. Okay, so her little community is 1/3 less. Okay, so what can I do with it? I can use that inheritance. Again, I'm not gonna quit my job, or I'm not gonna be rich, but can I use that now to do philanthropy? And I kind of enjoy that. It's kind of fun. So once in a while I'll give a gift and they'll say, oh please no, and I'm like, my mom would have done that. Okay, so it's never too late. If we can't get them now, the kiddos can be encouraged to give as well, which is not this slide, but for some reason it was in my brain. So this slide here talks about, do we have the going beyond financial giving slide? Yeah. Times and talents. Some people are going to say, I'm tapped out, or my money's already in my house or my 401k. I can't give anything today. Fine. We would love to trade your time. Can you help us with some things? I feel guilty watching that mower go back and forth because I used to be on the mowing team. We used to do that as a volunteer. I got too hot, and I was the weak link on my mowing team. But are there ways to share? Okay, so that's not my talent. I had the time, I just didn't have the talent. How can we do a better job of our serving our church and our community through our time? Okay, so time, treasure, talents. I think we just need to encourage more. That's a great place or a great thing to do, like in your newsletters, just tell some stories, use some examples, use Chat GPT. I mean, if you can't come up with it, throw that in there. It is fun to play with if any of you've done it. Yeah. Give us this, a story that's 200 words about somebody that, donates time to their church. It will help you. At least you can always weave in the part that's important to you. But anyway, what's your time and talent? It's just as important as money. It's just as important as asking other people to give. Opportunities to get involved, that's another thing. If we can take some off of our staff, if we cannot hire some of those things, outsource it, get involved. I also think that deepens your faith, and it also helps that connection. We're talking about connection to your church and your community. Get involved, okay? And the number one reason people don't get involved in your church? They weren't asked. The number one reason people don't give?
They aren't asked.
They're not asked. Okay? Baptist guilt, however you want to call it. I also feel like they really do appreciate any of my money when somebody asks me for a gift. Okay? A lot of times they don't come to me and say, I need $1,000, whatever you can give. And so that day I might be able to give 25, that day I might be able to give it 100, but if you don't ask, and guess what? The most awkward thing about it is you're gonna have to ask them in person a lot of times. A phone call. So the YMCA does a drive here in town. Their best giving is because they have people like me making calls to peers. So I'll get something in the mail that says, please support the Y Family campaign. I'm gonna throw it over here, I'll talk to my husband. It gets buried with other bills or paper, right? But my dentist happens to be, so Mark Bush gives me a call and he says, Judy, thank you for that $100 gift you gave last year. Sure would like to count on you again. It's hard to say no, right? I'm writing that $100. We can do that better in church too. It's not guilt, it's just giving them an opportunity to give. Okay, it's telling that story. Or just remind them they're important, they're on your radar. It's not just a check, it's a person. Wow, I'm going totally off script. Sorry, that's gotta be hard to know when I'm flipping slides on you. So the next one talks about the power of collective giving. And I love this story because the first speaker that came in, she was in Wood River and they flooded, you remember in 2019? Horrible floods. And it also came into Gibbon. Well, Gibbon's in Buffalo County, which is the Community Foundation's area. And so I worked a lot with her and she was fantastic about pulling people together, asking for gifts, okay? Then, I don't know, how long was it? 4 months later, Kearney then got flooded. Gibbon got flooded again. Wood River had already done some good, what do you want to call it? Flood control, so they weren't hit as hard. But if you remember, Kearney had a lot of flood water. Gibbon got hit again. We raised, I can't promise the number. I'm going to say $600,000. That was not one donor. So collectively, and that's the same thing with your church or a big community campaign or whatever, is generosity multiplied. Give what you can. Here's how we're going to impact it. Be totally transparent. Explain to them where their money's going. I love to say the money's staying right here locally. Nothing against Lincoln and Omaha people, but I use it all the time and say, it's staying here in central Nebraska. We're not gonna have it leak to Lincoln or Omaha. We're not gonna have it leak to Washington, D.C. We're gonna take care of our people here. I think that's super important. This talked about massive results with both church and community. Just collective impact. Look what's going on with the hurricanes going through there. The government's not gonna rescue us all. It's people like you and I, that 75% of that pie chart, writing those checks, getting online with our phones and making those gifts. So that's, I think, where churches, sometimes he was showing the pyramid, and I'm all for that, and there's very much truth in that 5% of our members are giving 95% of our gifts. But let's start to educate and train and get that next generation excited, or that next tier of people. And another great story, and I know a couple of you probably know this person here in town, but she would come in with a $100 check and she'd say, it's very important for me to be anonymous. can you write 5 checks to my favorite local charities in Kearney? It was Christmas. We had 2 or 3 staff. We had an office downtown. We were busy. We didn't really want to pause and write, 5 $20 checks, but we did it. We did it for a couple years. And my staff was like, oh, here she comes. We never saw money from her. We're not that rude. I'm just saying, we do have honest conversations by the coffee pot, right? This sweet lady would come in. She'd write, 3 or 4 years we did this. We moved to another location and she found us and she came up there and she said, you took good care of me. You didn't make me feel like my gift was small. You honored me and made it anonymous. I know it was a pain, but thank you. I don't think it was a test. I think she just genuinely appreciated it. This woman has no kids, no children. She's writing everything over to the Community Foundation. So when she passes, we're gonna get her farm ground that she inherited, her retirement, her house, all of her investments. That could have been a Methodist church, right? It could be any of us. I'm just saying, take care of those people, even though it's a tiny, tiny gift. You just never know where it's gonna multiply. So again, in her case, that generosity is gonna multiply, not in her lifetime. Now what's happening now is she's shifting. This has been 10, 15 years. She's starting to bring more of those checks by because she's getting a kick out of watching it while she's alive, okay? There's gonna be a heck of a gift when she passes. She's probably gonna outlive me. I'll be retired and she's gonna be, 99 before that gift's realized, but I'm still gonna rejoice because our community's gonna be better for it, right? So that seed was planted, but I think she's really there's a joy when you give. Don't you guys feel great when you take a pie to somebody that's not feeling well, or you make a donation and you feel like you're making a difference? So that's also what gets multiplied as well. The other part about collective giving is long-term legacy. They keep talking, I keep pointing behind me because they were here first, but the speakers this morning talked about legacy gifts. They also talked about endowments. One of my favorite gifts is Carol Cope from our community. She was a philanthropist. When she passed, she gave the Community Foundation. She gave a lot of different charities, including her church, money. But she gave the Community Foundation an unrestricted endowment, $800,000, okay? I don't know, how long's Carol been gone, do you think, 8, 10 years? Yeah, and she lived to be almost 100, right? I mean, maybe past her, maybe 100. Anyway, she lived a long time. That has been amazing because our board now can say, what's the need at the time? Let's say we want to support human trafficking. That's probably something Carol didn't think about 8, 10 years ago. So the beauty about an unrestricted endowment is there's always money given to the church in your case, or in our case, the community, to do stuff that's coming up that she didn't even think about. So what's the greatest need? I think that's the best gift, is allowing that church, allowing that Community Foundation board to react to what's the greatest need. The other thing about a long-term legacy gift is, you might say, Judy, I don't have millions to give. I'm not a Carol Cope. So when I first started this business, I don't know if Dan was on the board at the time, but we tried to do a legacy society. And I thought, my gosh, my kids are in grade school. I'm making a nonprofit wage. I don't have a lot of money to give, but I felt like I needed to be a legacy giver. So in my will, when we worked with our attorney on it, who's gonna take care of our kiddos when we pass away, who's our personal representative, but the first thing I put in there is $10,000 off the top is going to XYZ charity. Because my kids won't miss that first 10, okay? It's still in there. I'm in my late 50s, it's still in there. So that's another way you can do a legacy gift. If you don't feel like you can do an endowment, there's a way you can just have that written down, and you can speak to that too, how easy that is, right?
I'm just thinking about something personal, but between my wife and I, we have some retirement money, and we talked about if my wife would happen to pass away, I really don't need that money. I'm still working, and I don't plan to retire. So, but she's retired, and so even though it might be something I want to give, we're going to take it from her account and have it go to charities, because I don't necessarily need it where she might be more inclined to feel like she needs it since she doesn't have the employment income that I have. So you kind of also have to plan out how this is going to work if you die.
And it changes, right? So
Yeah, it changes.
if you passed before she did, you know, she would be then. I've got great slides on women and giving too, by the way. It's kind of fun. Us women give differently than men. So bring me back next time, wherever you're. But the legacy is, and make sure you talk to your kids. We actually had to go to court because we had a very, very generous gentleman pass away. He had no children or a spouse, but his nephews thought they were going to get the gift, the inheritance. But they weren't necessarily kind to this man, and so he went to the attorney and changed it and gave us some and the Grand Island Community Foundation some. The reason I say this is it caused them so much pain because they didn't know he shifted and changed the will. So if you get to a point, talk to your attorney, have those hard discussions, but make sure your kids and your possible inheritant people, if you know, the attorneys can help you with that and how to navigate that. But we wasted a lot of that going to court and getting, we didn't end up having to go to court, we ended up settling outside, but that's unfortunate too. So this isn't always easy, but I'm all about transparency and communication, and I think that's one of my slides coming up. I'm really a bad speaker because I keep going. My next slide talks about building a culture of generosity, and it's fun because I sat this morning and they said it a couple times is we as leaders need to be the first givers. I do that with my board at the Community Foundation. We just bought a building. I said before we ask for $1 or write one grant, all of us, all 18 board members need to give something, and all of us staff need to give something. And some of my staff don't make $50,000, right? So that might have been a little harder. But they gave 25 or 50. I can say we're 100%. That's all that matters, right? And so before we ask for one gift, and I just think we need to do the better job of that at church, right? We can all complain at the trustee meeting, we don't have enough money, but do all of us trustees give? I mean, not just in the plate, but do we have the church in our will? So lead by example. Inspiring others. Again, testimonies are awesome, stories. If you're uncomfortable getting in front of the church, maybe have them video it, you know, that's sometimes easier at your own house. Tell the story. You don't have to be braggadocious, just say, here's why I give. Here's why the church is important to me. And I think you're gonna see that really takes off and inspires other giving. The next slide talks about challenges and encouragement. So I talked about talking to your family, let them know your wishes, acknowledge economic pressures. Again, this morning they talked about the economy might feel a little wonky to us. We may not be ready to give our money away because we're nervous. You know, what's long-term care going to cost us? What's, you know, our utilities going to cost us? Whatever. So we understand that that's going to ebb and flow, but just understand that when you make a gift, when you pass away, you're not going to care. Can't take it with you, right? So just think about the economic pressures. It's never a good time to ask for money, but it's a great time to tell a story because they're going to remember that and come back and give to you, your church. Trust in God's timing. So again, 2 Corinthians 9:7-8. Continue trusting God even in seasons of uncertainty, knowing that He rewards cheerful and faithful giving. I like that one. Next slide, we talked about transparency and communication. You can tell my brain forgot I did some slides here. But ask questions. I don't know about you, but I don't mind people calling and saying, what's your rate? What fees are you charging? What are you invested in? I don't mind those. I like to show people our audit. I have nothing to hide. I like people say, you like an audit? Yeah, because I want people to understand we're doing everything we can. Integrity is so important. And so these guys run with integrity in mind. We run with integrity in mind. One thing you can do if you like to give to other charities besides your church or your community foundation is go on guidestar.org, and it's a website where you can look up any charity as long as they file a tax return. I like to look and see how much they're paying their CEO. I like to see how much is actually going back into their community or their church or their missions. I like to know, anyway, what's their overhead. If you want to do a little research, if this is a big important thing to you, churches aren't on there, but any other 501c3, do your homework, ask questions. I think transparency is key.
I missed that. What was the website?
Guidestar.org. Yeah. Another thing is talk to others. If you're not comfortable talking to your family, talk to your pastor, talk to other church leaders, talk to your Sunday school group. What's the greatest need in your church? what's the greatest need in your community? You know, there might be some overlap. And there might be some ways that you can band together and make a difference that way. The next slide talks about donor flexibility. I think that's important. You know, when they talked about all the different things you can do at the Nebraska United Methodist Foundation, they talked about lots of options. A lot of us foundations have lots of options. Ask those questions. To kind of tell them your story, tell your attorney what you want to do, and they can be creative too. We have a donor in town, and he gave his house to the university. He's now paying them rent. Okay, so when he passes away, they get the house, but he gets to live there. He's paying them rent because he can and he wants to support it. When he passes away, it's going to be, I think, to house artists that are teaching at the university because he loves art. So there's just different ways you can do gifting too. Charitable Remainder Unit Trust. I mean, you know, talk to your attorney. There's all kinds of fancy things you can do. You know, earlier today, I think it was Bruce talked about annuities. We've had some annuities that went through us, but not necessarily to us. So we had a sweet little lady, and she had an annuity, and it would pay her X amount while she was living. And when she passed, she wanted it to go to the animal rescue. Didn't even go to us, but we were the conduit. So there's lots of ways you can talk to your donors, your even yourself about how, in your case, how can we do an annuity so we get a little bit of money to live off of, and yet the rest goes to the church or whatever the mission is or what they believe in. So there's a lot of different flexibility. And then just, you know, I think we just need to pray sometimes. I think, I'm talking to myself here, okay? So the woman in the mirror, right, is sometimes I think I'm in control of things, or I want to be the boss of this, or I want to control how my assets are going. I forget to stop and pray, you know, guide me with this. You know, what can I do differently? How can we work together to make a bigger impact? So that's that slide. And then the last, or this next one, am I skipping over some? Because I added some in between. So. Okay. Transactional versus transformational. More than a weekly gift in the offering plate. That's where my mom was great. She was steady Eddie. When I look back through her checking account, $100, $100, $100. We goofed. We did not talk to her about a gift when she passed away. Okay. For her little church, that's a big deal. So don't goof like us. You know, have those discussions. There's a wonderful asset she could have given the church that would not affected us kiddos. I love that vision of that bushel basket of corn. You know, just here's for the church, here's for my community, here's for the dog and cat fund, whatever you're passionate about, and look what's left for the kiddos. There's plenty. No one's gonna starve. And then I'm a proponent of doing both. I love the idea of endowments, the kind of your savings account, your future fund. But also make sure to continue to give them a plate. And then lastly, I want to give us two thoughts to close with. The first is a prayer of thanksgiving. So I think, especially in this is a season of Thanksgiving, right? So especially when we start to get into November, December, just pray and thank God for faithful hearts of the donors. Ask for continued blessings over their lives, families, and the church's mission. I think it's good for us to hear it out loud. I think it's good for the people that are hearing our prayer to say it out loud, but it's still okay to do it at home quietly or in the car. Sometimes I have guilt because I do it at bed and then I'm out. So I think that must be taking the guilt off me or the stress off of me, but you know, don't forget to stop and pray and be thankful. And then the last one is, we just need to bless the community and bless our church. So don't forget to pray for the expansion of the church's influence through their generosity, uplifting the church, the community, and future generations. So any questions, comments? I hope that inspired you a little bit. But I think it just goes hand in glove, a strong church, strong community, strong church. So thank you.